so years, and more aggressively the last the reason this next topic is something that's kind of on the table in American discourse and in quote unquote intelligentsia, and I want to get to this one. What do you guys think about reparations? Where do you stand on reparations? Either one of you guys can take it.
I see you're looking at Rome, so
I can't tell who he's looking at.
That's because I punted it to you. That's why you punted that one.
Okay, yeah, I'll take that punt. I covered this on my podcast too. There are currently 2 active, ongoing reparation initiatives happening in this country right now today. In addition to what the Congressional Black Caucus has been working on for years, predicated by the works of the late John Conyers. But in Asheville, North Carolina, right now today, as well as in Evanston, Illinois, right now today, they are the only 2 cities in this whole country that are actively in the process of extending reparations to its Black citizens right now today in 2021. They're in ongoing talks right now to discuss the rollout of it. June 3rd, I think they had a town hall about what the program would look like. They polled the citizens, and so they pointed out some of where the income disparities were and where the needs could be best addressed. And so some of that funding will go straight to housing. I have some issues with that, but they say they can't get around that because if they just cut them a check and just let them spend the money on whatever they want, well, they got to pay taxes on that. And they say they're not allowed to legally do that. I call bull crap because it's another smokescreen, because they have found a way to extend reparations to every other group that has been harmed by the systemic oppression of this country. They always find a way to give them reparations. But when it comes to Black people, they start tap dancing and moonwalking and acting as if it's so difficult to figure out how to make it happen. And so reparations is exactly what it implies. It's repairing a harm that's been done generationally, okay, just from being in this country and being susceptible to the systemic disparities with regard to the issues like race, with regard to having access to credit, having access to land, and having access to territory, and having your 40 acres. All of those things are known to benefit anybody that's coming to this country. And white immigrants have benefited from that. They have gotten handouts. That's why they have come to this country. And because they know that that's what is here, for some reason, once they're here, they have a problem with other people doing the same way, doing the same thing. Now, again, I don't want to go back to the discussion of immigration because I know we're talking about a legal path to citizenship, but the idea is that anybody that comes to this country is seeking its resources, and they know that there are resources to be gained in the form of this country when they decide. I mean, I keep dwelling on this word cronyism, picking who is worthy and who isn't. They seem to have no problem doing that with every other group except Black people. So I'm encouraged by what's happening in Asheville and Evanston. I believe reparations is long overdue. And I think Congress needs to advance the bill that's in Congress right now. I believe it's called HR 40, likely to die in the Senate with knuckleheads like Sinema and Manchin. But we'll talk about that another time. But it is absolutely essential that they take this issue seriously. It's long overdue. They'll never be able to fully repair the damage or the disparities that have been caused systemically by this country. But having the committees in place to at least start the discussions, which is basically what the HR 40 is advocating for, it's a step in the right direction. And I think we need to support it.
Okay. Jeff, you want to go or you want me to go?
No, I'll talk about it. I think that, I'm never closed off to ideas. Conceptually, I agree that, Native Americans were given land on reservation land. not good land. It's typically in arid areas with no water flow. The Japanese had reparations as well. And I think it's disingenuous to discount reparations when we do truly give a lot of illegal immigrants, non-citizens, lots of money. And I'm more of a citizenry taking care of Americans. And I think that certainly this country has a serious black eye and have perpetrated some of the worst crimes on Americans ever.
I'm just gonna say no pun intended right there, America. Black eye, get it? No, forget it.
I'm with you.
I see what you did there.
I see. It wasn't funny. That's why.
That's okay. That's all right.
So I'm open to the idea, and I know that when individuals, especially white individuals, start talking about, well, how are you going to implement it? It becomes more of a race issue. Well, you don't want to give up what you have to pay out other people. That's not mine at all. For me, I want to identify, when we talk about the injustice, what solution is the most viable to make people whole again? What is the solution? Because a $10,000 one-time payment, I think that was what Connor's bill was originally, right? Doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't create upward lift and upward mobility. It doesn't impact those communities in an overwhelming and overarching way like a red line did. So then how in the world can we start a discussion just because it's a political football without real solutions? And that's what bothers me now, is that maybe this is the time, because of where we are in American history and what's happening with race relations in our country. But certainly one-time payments without any delivery of who gets it. Is it direct descendants of slaves? Is it somewhat how tribal regions do, where if you're 1/16 of that tribe, you get a lower version of your payout each month? Like, how are we going to implement that? Where does the money come from? Do we, what are other areas of the country impacted more? So I'm open to the idea. What I certainly don't want from a fiscally, quote unquote, conservative person is that money needs to be, if we allocate it as American people, if we decide we're going to do that, then it needs to be allocated in a way where it's most beneficial and not just a sugarcoat idea to bounce around to get political votes.
Well, the way to avoid that is they have to acknowledge the harm done, because repairing is part and parcel of restoring people to their previous, status. And so you have to acknowledge, when I say you, I'm talking this government that needs to publicly apologize, admit that they effed up, and make a good faith effort to make it right. And I think they need to just cut a check. Now, first of all, they need somebody like a Dr. Claude Anderson to be a part of the discussion, because he's, one of the godfathers of this discussion. And if he's not a part of the discussion, it's a little disingenuous. Maxine Waters is somebody that has embraced Dr. Claude Anderson, but he's considered a bit of a pariah in political circles, in that he talks the talk and he really speaks strongly about advocating for issues such as this in the form of Black economic empowerment. And so he's not going to be considered a part of the mainstream, but they'll call a can dance omen to talk down about it. But the reality is they found a way to get it done with all these other groups. And so they need to make a similar good faith effort to repair the harm done in this case as well.
So I guess I agree with both you gentlemen. Which, damn, um,
Wow.
you
That's the
know,
end of the show. Good night, folks.
but yeah. So, but I actually agree more strongly than both of you because I think that number one, when you set a precedent, then in my opinion, the precedent dictates what happens going forward. So with Native Americans, they get tax breaks, they get land, they actually get free housing, believe it or not. They also get, I believe, free travel, interstate travel or something like that. There's something with travel that they get. Now, they were the first to feel the wrath of manifest destiny of the Europeans, right? In this land. There's another. There's other groups. For example, the Japanese who got in internment camps during the war. They got reparations. Now, let me explain this, right? This is the absurdity of it. Even questioning whether the reparations should be given. They got reparations for being in internment camps for 3 years. There was no indentured servitude. There was no slavery. There was probably harsh treatment and jail-like experiences. But there was no widespread lynching. There was no 40 million people dying on the way over here in the ocean. There was no cutting off of feet because you tried to run. But on even more than that, the reason that America, the single biggest reason that America became a power, the single biggest was you had 300 years or 250 years of free labor.
Free labor.
250 years of free labor. You can't get past that. Nope. So any company, like Jeff said, wants to keep their profits. So if you can get away with free labor, then you're going to do it. But guess what? When you agree, when you do a harm to somebody, that you're going to pay it like you did to the Japanese, like Germany did to the Israelites, to the Jews, right? They gave them what, $89 billion in reparations? Okay. 6 million of them died. Okay. There's 40 million people who came from Africa in the ocean, not to mention all the people here. Think about the population here. We're still 13% or 13.5% of the population, but everybody who was born of a black and white union is considered black. So ostensibly, since they decided that if you have one drop of black blood in you, that you're black, we should clearly be at least 30% of the population by now. So that tells you the extent of the genocide that's happened as a result of the institutionalized racism that this country has besieged upon those that they call black people. So the Japanese got reparations. The Jews got reparations. Not only that, they got their own occupation. Matter of fact, they have their own occupation right now in the Middle East. It's an occupation. It's an occupied situation that the British initiated in America.
Don't get off topic. Don't bring in Palestine and Israel.
Okay? The Japanese got reparations. In Rosewood, they got some reparations for the what happened in Rosewood, Florida. Where else did they get reparations? Anyway, the point is that the precedent has been set. So the people that are most responsible for America being a world power, why are we even having the discussion? Not only that, who cares if it's a situation where it makes you rise up? That should be secondary. People should get checks. On top of that, there should be long-term systemic benefits like tax like Ice Cube. I saw Ice Cube talking about reparations. He suggested that so-called black people should never pay taxes again, and I am inclined to agree with that. And let me explain why. Number one, it would be a significant and ad infinitum acknowledgement of wrongs done. But number two, I think would actually put back into the community, because it seems like we're taking it out by taking away the taxes. But I think if people don't have to pay taxes on stuff, they probably are going to buy more stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So I think in the long term, in the long run, it would actually boost the economy versus just taking out of the economy. But who knows? I haven't done the numbers on that. But there should the discussion as to whether or not they should happen is completely absurd, in my opinion, because precedent has been set.
100%. And I think if they follow the lead of people that have been studying this issue and have advocated for it year after year, because ever since Conyers introduced it, it's been introduced to Congress every single year since 1989. And so I'd be careful about quoting Ice Cube. I mean, I'm a fan of Cube, but that plan that he came up with.
I'm not talking about that plan. That wasn't part of this discussion.
But he talked about not paying taxes as a part of that plan that he was putting forth, saying that the CBC wasn't doing enough, and they already had all that stuff in their bill. And this is part of the issue where, you know, people who do the work, who really understand politics and know how to get bills passed and through Congress, it's not sexy work, and it's not going to make headlines, and it's not going to be a part of Twitter wars. But the heavy lifting is getting done behind the scenes on this issue. And communities such as Greenwood, I'm not familiar with the reparations to Rosewood. I don't know if they actually got something for their pain that was endured there, but Greenwood certainly did not, and that was where Black Wall Street was. And so you can't have this discussion without at least bringing in Tulsa into this whole thing. I mean, but just pick one. I mean, there's so much harm to be restored that you'll be here till infinity figuring out where to begin. But the whole point is that you're right. To have an issue with this discussion is a non-starter of a discussion in the first place. This is a no-brainer. They should have done this a long time ago.
Do you think that your guys' opinion is based on emotional component also, or strictly on?
Very interesting question. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that, I mean, obviously Steve's very passionate about it. You're passionate about it. I'm passionate about the topic also. But my question would be, is that there are many that pose the question of, okay, if direct harm was done by a group to another, then who's responsible to then take care of that injury? So then how is it that so then if we're now removed from it, and my first generation wife from Mexico, who has no history of her people or of her lineage perpetrating any crime on African Americans, particularly crimes have probably been perpetrated on them. So are they responsible?
Okay, can I
answer? Is this emotional for you?
No, not at all. No, not at all. Michael.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what makes you throw the emotional component in if it's not also emotional for yourself.
No, because I think that anytime you talk about race, it becomes an emotional component for many people. And that's why I was just asking. For me, it has nothing. For me, it's not emotional at all. My thing is that if we're teasing it out from a solution perspective, let's just say we all agree reparations are a necessity. Then how do you tease it out from a country perspective where we have so many people from different walks of life that may not have benefited from the wealth created from bondage? So then who becomes responsible? Is it if we just globally say, well, the United States government is, then it would be every tax-paying citizen. So if it's every tax-paying citizen, even those that have come to this country that have had no ancestry of responsibility are now taking on that responsibility.
Well, I think it's if we depersonalize it, then you can have a more nuanced discussion about it, because there are going to be individual anecdotal stories, but you're a businessman. So how easy was it for you to get your loan? How easy was it for you to get past the hurdles of being approved to open and run a business? And what benefit of the doubt were you extended just because of your name, your zip code, or your ethnicity or demographic, that somebody else may not be afforded that same benefit of the doubt?
In
And so
2021?
they wouldn't be afforded that same benefit of the doubt because there's a long held perception about who's worthy. And
In 2021.
absolutely.
Okay, so I want to let you know that I'm trying to refinance my building, and I started in August of last year. So it has nothing to do with race. So it's particularly in California.
But see, but you're talking. That's what I'm saying. I mean, your individual story notwithstanding, that's what I'm saying. There are going to be personal anecdotes, but it doesn't disprove the rule. Individual anecdotes don't disprove the rule, though, because for the most part, people that look like Steve and I aren't given equal fair treatment when it comes to opening businesses because we're not extended the same line of credit. I respect where you're coming from, but again, there are going to be some individual anecdotal experiences, and there's way more white people in this country than black people. So I know it can't be anywhere across the board. We can't make general statements about anything just because of the way people look. So that wouldn't be fair to you, who has had to suffer and fight for every inch of what you have. So we're not coming for you. We're coming for holding the government accountable for the harm that they need to rightfully restore to the people that have been disenfranchised.
Well, no, I'm not disputing your point. What I'm saying is that particularly in California, there's all kinds of loan programs for people of different persuasions, right? If you're a Hispanic female, here's a particular set of rules for you. If you're a black male, here's a specific set of rules for you. Just in this last COVID thing, right? In LA County, passing for black business owners and things like that for getting access to money. Now, so to say,
get it, though.
What's that?
They didn't get it. They didn't get a lot of that money. A lot of that got stalled, and so it was supposed to be in the bill. But
the money's been earmarked for county for sure, and our city in general.
Earmarked.
Well, my point is that I think the idea of access to money in 2021, that has not been my experience. Now, I will absolutely agree that our country definitely did systematically impoverish a group of people on purpose. And that has had a direct result on the socioeconomic status of today in 2021.
Okay. So I'm going to answer it and make it a little more simple than even Rome's answer. Okay. Does anybody believe that this country is this country without 250 years of free labor? Exactly. So everybody who lives here, if you agree that the institution of slavery was a quote unquote black eye, then there should be, or not should be, then it would be based on the precedents that have been set. It would be prudent and actually undeniable that the reparations be given, because everybody who lives in this country has benefited from the institution of slavery. Every one of us. There was a guy that I saw that said something like, well, black people are better off here because they're here than if they were in Africa. Here's the problem with that statement, and it shows his ignoramity, if that's a freaking word.
I'll take it.
this country would be the Middle East if it wasn't for the institution of slavery. And we might not have been this country, because the institution of slavery started before 1776. And the ability of this country to produce goods for a long period of time and supply other worlds was supremely significant. Secondly, the denial of access of the American dream to acquiring wealth over that period of time directly affects those people living today. Because if everyone had the same level of access to wealth, and you agree that slavery was a black eye on this country, then you agree that the inability of those people for those many years to even think about acquiring wealth, and even the years after, if you agree that they were denied that, so that their kids were denied that, and their kids' were denied that, and their kids' were denied that, then even those people are entitled to acquiring some access to that American dream. So that's how I feel about it, outside of emotion, because if it was Mexicans, if it was Native Americans, I would feel the exact same way, because precedent has been set and people agree that it was a wrong done. And what strikes me, interestingly enough, is that the Jewish people have gotten, I believe it was like $90 billion for their reparations in terms of payouts. Per capita, per person, they got, I think, 100 times more than any other group with respect to reparations. 100 times more. That includes the people of apartheid. They got reparations, but they got like 10 grand or something crazy, right? The people from Rosewood, the people from the Tuskegee experiment, they got reparations, but it was like 170 grand of the people that got injected with syphilis and no treatment. Okay. So why is it that the Jewish people got by far the biggest amount? I know they're not in America. I know Germany paid for them, but America assisted with the payments. Why is it that they got the most amount of any group that got reparations? I mean, think about that. So, and this is a group that suffered for what, 20 years? We're talking about 300 years, 350 years. Not to mention the fact that these people are the people that actually built the freaking country. So to me,
you raise a good point. Then is it the United States alone that needs to pay reparations, or is it other
everybody
countries?
who has participated in living in this country owes those reparations, because this country wouldn't be this country. This country would be the Middle East, or this country would have maybe lost the first war they had. Right?
What about the countries that participated in the sale of humans and participated in the trading of goods at lower cost?
Well, Germany, interestingly enough, Germany has taken down every statue that reminds them of Hitler in the entire country, every flag, every statue of Nazi anything, right? So the countries that participated, like, even though Europe decided to get rid of slavery, 35 years before America, they haven't paid any reparations. Although their policies have been much more dark-skinned people friendly than America's. I'm sorry, I forgot what was your question?
Well, I was just saying. So as far as the African American reparations, not the slavery that was held in Germany, but all the countries that participated in the slave trade and participated in the benefit of lower cost of goods that were provided by slave and free labor, right?
Yeah.
Are those countries responsible also? Because those countries benefited economically as well.
I think that's okay to consider, but it's kind of a red herring. So, that's for the United Nations to answer. We have questions in America that need to be answered and it doesn't need to be convoluted by any other questions about anybody else.
I disagree.
Well, I'm not saying they shouldn't be addressed. I'm saying when we're talking about the issues that America has, that has no bearing on anything, in my opinion, because America has found money for whatever they want to find money for at every instance, regardless of who doesn't benefit, who does benefit. You know, this effort to kill Castro over here, or this effort to assassinate Kennedy, or this bill, this pork bill for these corporations. I mean, they find money. Money's not the issue. The issue is that we're only 13.5% of the population, and it's never going to happen because we're not a big enough percentage of the population for politicians to move.
Well, I don't think saying it'll never happen is.
I'm a realist, man. I'm a realist, and politicians move when the votes make them move.
Yeah, but the climate is changing.
because the Hispanic population is growing at such a rate, it's much more likely that Hispanics will get what they want than any level of reparations. Much more likely. I am not very optimistic, especially with the things that I've seen over the last 4 years, with people's willingness to be so. I mean, we just had a freaking insurrection, and people are saying that it looked like people were walking on a tourist visit.
Yeah, okay, let's not move on to the insurrection.
Well, my point is that I think that people are so locked in their corners and unwilling to even speak the truth about true stuff that the likelihood of something like this happening.
I think that never before has there been an opportunity like now to get the reparations discussion going and to get it done. I think the social climate now, I think you're seeing much more social movements. You're seeing different, like I said, different local communities and states buying into the idea. I think your pessimism is understood, but I think that looking at it as a whole, I think we're closer moving in that direction than ever before. You think it'll be stonewalled? I think what's going to end up happening, in all honesty, is there'll be some watered down version of a reparation, and nobody will be happy with it. That's what I think will happen. But I think there will be some form of reparations paid out. I don't know in what form, but I think it'll happen. I think it's this country is finding the time to do that.
Well, we started this discussion saying that we're as divided as we've ever been, and I don't see it in this climate anytime soon.
Well, I hope Jeff is right. I mean, we have some test cases going on right now today that we can follow in Asheville as well as in Evanston. Like I said, I've been covering those two cities for the last few months. And so let's see what happens. And Jeff, I hope you're right. But I think there's a lot of apathy to overcome, because I think there are a lot of people that would empathize with you that, okay, well, what about me? You know, and I know you're the kind of person, you're not going to, you know, personalize this in a way to personally put yourself in front of this cause going through. But there are people who do genuinely feel aggrieved, as you do, that this is literally taking food off their plate in order to help someone else. And then you have boneheaded senators like Tim Scott in the Senate who comes out and says, no, that's not fair to issue this money to Black farmers, because that's what white farmers did to them, and it wasn't fair then. So you're saying taking money from them because it was done to them in the first. It's like, bruh, sit down.
Talk about the sunken place.
The sunken place. Okay, so you're going to have people that are going to be talking this down on both sides. But I'll just land by just saying, Steve, I hope Jeff is right. I really do.
It would be nice. Well, about the watered down part.
No, about this climate. Well, I don't think he's wrong about that either, to a certain extent, because I think it's about compromise. And I think that's what progressives, and I know we've been talking for a while, but progressives have a really difficult time with that word because they feel so disconnected from the process of everything, and it feels like they just want everything now without any compromise. But they're not willing. Well, that's I'll save that for another conversation. But yeah, it is going to be watered down, and that's politics, because you give a little and you take a little, and at the end of the day, you both come out with something, but neither one of you walks out with everything that you want. You know.
But that's my fear, in all honesty, because by the government doing a watered down version, I fear that it doesn't solve any problem. And that once that is done, it's and the US government has a tendency to do that, right? Well, here's this, we're done with that topic and issue now. And that, I think, could create an even bigger divide, rather than intellectually, which will not happen in the U.S. government, but rather than intellectually coming up with a system and a plan to properly perform, reparations, whether it be economically, socially, educationally. I just think that it'll be a watered down version, and it'll do more harm than good.
Do you have employees working under you?
I do.
Okay, so for the longest time, the Affordable Care Act was very unpopular. Mm-hmm. And now its popularity is soaring. And one of the reasons why it was so unpopular initially was because, number one, Democrats didn't fight for it, and they allowed people to punch holes into it. But all of the fixes that are inherent in the problems in the Affordable Care Act, they're there. And cities such as Minneapolis and one in Alaska, if they implemented the exchanges, a lot of those problems would go away, with people losing their coverage and premiums going up. But because there was this sentiment that they wanted the policy to fail because of who instituted it, and then it morphed into becoming Obamacare. But the fixes are inherently in the bill itself. But my point is that it was extremely unpopular, and because of that, he lost Congress as a result. And again, people not being awakened to the importance of voting in every single election, they didn't go out and vote in those midterms. So they lost the House, then they lost the Senate, and then now people hate Obama because of that. But the Affordable Care Act stands. So to that extent, I think that it's not going to be popular. I think people are going to take pot shots at the notion of admitting that you effed up and this harm was done, and this harm needs to be restored to these people because of the free labor, as Steve has helped us to clearly see tonight, that this country would not be in this glorious, vainglorious position that it's in without all that free labor for all those years. But overcoming the sense that this is going to take from me personally is going to be the hurdle that's going to be one of the most difficult to clear. However, I do have faith that the people that have been working on this issue are the same people that are working on DC statehood. And these fights are going to be ongoing. I think we're going to chip away at some progress. And I do, think Jeff does have a point about, in the sense that if they compromise too much and they say, well, it's over, we're not coming back to this for the rest of this generation, then that's going to be a problem if the right people aren't a part of the discussion. And so I'm hoping that they don't do that, and they deploy the right resources on this, and we have to push them and hold them accountable.
For so years, and more aggressively the last. Well, the reason